Hello Unify friends. Okay, here's me doing some explanatory videos for the whole Scalar to Unify patch library development. I said I was old school and this takes a lot of effort, but I'm also up for new challenges and personal growth. So I will figure out this video tutorial thing. Bear with me as I learn the ropes here. Anyway, so the focus here is I wanted to give a little bit more context to the Scalar 2 patch library for Unify that I'm working on. Since Scalar is a little bit different beast than your average instrument library that have been unified so far, I need to give a little bit more context as to what my thinking was, what I was implementing there. So for those of you who are hesitant to download the zip file and install it right away, you want to see it in action first. This is what I'm trying to show you here. So let me go into my Unify libraries here. I have Scalar to Unify. This is the library I've been working on. So you see here the screenshot that I provided. That's just the way it's sorted. There are over 300 presets, and it only showed like the first 30, and it just happened to sort the instruments. One of the easy things when I was testing how to incorporate Scalar and Unify, I just basically created for each Scalar instrument one Unify preset. It's not that helpful. I mean, these presets, they're wonderful to make sounds within Scalar, but you wouldn't use Scalar just for its sounds. But if you scroll down here, this is something the screenshots didn't show. Make this a little bit wider here. This is the file list that I provided in the text file in the forum. There are way more presets, and to all you guys' comments on the MIDI patterns, everything you said, yes, I totally agree. That was my same thinking, and I actually did implement it along those lines. That just wasn't visible in the screenshot. So that's part one, just to show you. See, so they're all in there. Now, I've also said that words, we're all trying to make music. So since I do a video and it has sound, I should take the opportunity to show you some of the presets in terms of sound. So I don't know how they sound or what everybody's music tastes. I'm just going to pick some random ones. This is not to show off how cool they sound. I'm just mapping the Scalar stuff, whether what you find useful in Scalar is your own taste. So let's just click on this one here. Takes a little bit to load because what I did, so instrument, you can see the naming standard here. There are instrument prefixes and then there are MIDI prefixes. So the instrument ones load a preset into a Unify instrument layer. Okay, I have to. So this says chords are at C2 because in Scalar. So what this particular preset has, it picked a song from Alexander Nettelbach. That's something that comes with Scalar, right? You have all these artists, and Scalar comes up with these chord progressions. And what I do in that preset here, I mapped in Scalar. You can map the keyboard to chords. So if I press C2 on my keyboard here, it presses the first chord, then I press D2. Right, that's what this means when I say chords at C2 on the keyboard. Literally the node C2 will trigger the chord progression Scalar. And that's something you have to know Scalar. I'm not going into detail here how Scalar works. Those of you already know Scalar. And there's a Scalar forum as well where I'm pretty active as well. If you have Scalar specific questions, it's probably best addressed there. So I have instrument artists. So the logicus instrument is basically instrument layer. Then in Scalar you have these artists. Right, I showed you here that there's an artist menu in Scalar, chord progression sorted by artist. Then we have instrument baseline. So that is one of the performance up here. See, bass, funk, so that's what this is. What that is, just you press a key and place that bass line regardless of chord progression. Then we have instrument guitar that makes use of the Scalar, basically maps the Scalar instrument acoustic guitar to strumming. There's one of the articulations is strumming in Scalar. And again, it says at C2, right? I press the key C2 on my MIDI keyboard here, and C2 starts with that first chord, D2, So the C2, D2, E2, those are just the physical keys on your keyboard that trigger that chord. It doesn't make the sound of the note C2. It calls up that chord. Okay, and so on. Then here you have this basically uses a scale. This is why it's called Scalar. That tool started out just having scales. They added later all these artist chord progressions. But here I mapped the key where it says chords at C2. And then the notes are on C3, because Scalar has this way how once you have a scale, it maps all the keys into that scale. So that's what that means, chord notes in C3. That's the setting here. So the naming of my patch here in Unify uses Scalar terminology. I'm not trying to explain exactly what it does. I just map it to something how you would call it in Scalar. Then you have phrases. It's another Scalar concept. See, under articulations, expressions, you have phrases, and there's a whole another submenu. This is basically what I'm trying to map all these settings in Scalar, because they're all individual choices that you can combine with a whole bunch of other choices, but Scalar doesn't have a master preset bank right now, and this is the value we're adding with Unify with me unifying this to have a where you can just concretely search, right? Because I also tagged all this. If you look here, I have a tag called, so you probably don't have this in your Unify, but I have a whole bunch of scale tags from Scalar. So if you want to see all the patches for these, all Scalar, we're still in Scalar, right? So these all shows you all the ones related, all the patches related to a particular scale. I think that's immensely valuable. That really goes more into the territory of using Unify for the music theory side, not just for playing it, but organizing your musicality in it. I'll control click this to show everything again. Anyway, so I'll just keep this short for now, but you get the idea. I might do another one when I see questions. If you have any concrete questions, I can do a more target video. I just don't want to make a half-an-hour video and walk through every single thing. I just wanted to show you the spirit of this. Maybe one more thing I'll talk about it. Here's the MIDI. What's the difference between instrument and MIDI? So within Unify, the yellow layers are MIDI layers, and I try to have intelligent naming. You can double click here and name these. So I try to put some intelligent naming in here. So you have this MIDI source of Scalar. I'm not sure what that playing sound is. I must have another instrument active somewhere. But so Scalar itself doesn't make any sounds here. It just passes on the notes through this is a Unify thing, right? Where you have an instrument layer and you map it back to MIDI 1, the Scalar layer. And I added another Scalar in here just to have a default sound, because the sine wave default doesn't sound that great. So I added another Scalar as an instrument, right? So which gets fed by that Scalar, but this is where you can replace it with your own instrument if you don't want to use a Scalar sound. And the other thing is you can, let's go back to that's why I put these instruments here. When you go into the Scalar, the Unify browser, and you hold Alt on a PC anyway, I think it's Command key on a Mac, you click while you hold Alt, it adds to it, right? So now I can say, I map this also, and now you have another instrument. So now you have this plug and play. You keep that MIDI layer Scalar up there while you drag other instruments in there. That's where it gets really cool. And that was one of the reasons why I had these Scalar instruments mapped just by themselves, so I can do this drag and drop. Not because they're such great instruments that you want to use on your own, but just as a proof of concept. It's really, Scalar being a MIDI generator is not just, you don't just load it as a sound creating layer, but that could be one of your melody generators. So that's the difference between the MIDI versus the instrument tracks. So if I double click just here on an instrument, see it just has one instrument layer. Of course I can alt click them and it just adds them, but they all play on their own. This probably doesn't sound good, two different house tracks. Actually house always sounds good no matter which one you mix together. And versus the melody one, the MIDI, the ensembles, all the different. Anyway, I promise to keep it short, so I'll end it here. Let me know if you have any questions, and then I can deep dive as wherever the interest is. Hope this was helpful. See you in the forum.